Uh, Okay. Hi, I'm Bonnie Sussman. I'm president of Kulanu. Welcome and thank you for coming to another wonderful Kulanu online session. We know this is a very difficult time for the Jewish community around the globe in so many ways. I hope this presentation about developing Jewish communities in Indonesia provides a glimmer of hope and inspiration for a brighter future for all of us. For those of you who are first timers, Kulanu supports returning, emerging, and isolated Jewish communities around the globe. Um, we are in 33 countries, and I think this is very inspirational to be able to say that these communities are philo-Semitic, and we hear a lot about anti-Semitic, but the philo-Semitism around the globe is breathtaking, and Kulanu actually engages in dozens and dozens and dozens of philo-Semitic groups. I am so glad to have Rabbi David Kunin with us today. I would like to make a few announcements before we begin. We have another Zoom on October 7th at 10 a.m. Actually, to commemorate the October 7th massacre, we invite you to a special commemorative event as we reflect, remember, and come together with Marla Bretschneider and myself, who are co-editors of a book called 7 October, Jewish Reflections Around the Globe. In this book, there are essays from our friends all around the world, and we're going to read certain pieces, and we hope that they'll come and they'll read certain pieces. It is international people from all over putting in their perspective around October 7th. We also are planning a Zoom on China and something on our 30th birthday anniversary celebration. Molly, let's share the Rosh Hashanah video to start off.
Shana Tova, Happy New Year. Shana Tova Tikatevu, Shana Tova Tikatevu, Shana Tova, Shana Tova, Shana Tova Tikatevu, Shana Tova Tikatevu. Shana Tova Tikatevu, Shana Tova, Shana Tova, Shana Tova Tikatevu. I wish you Happy New Year, Shana Tova, sweetness of heaven, may the flavors of life and love accompany you throughout the year. Peace in the world and happiness in you. Happy New Year, c'est
I saw war. I saw moving.
Hello, somebody was talking? So David Balyaba from Cameroon wrote the song, wrote the music. And I think it was a pretty lovely little piece to watch. Thank you for their sponsors. Thank you for our event sponsors, Aaron and Karen Primack, Diane Schler, and Rabbi and Mrs. Sussman. That's me and my husband. If you consider any Zoom is a $50 sponsor, please, we're looking for sponsors for all of our programs. I'd like to introduce Rabbi Kunin. Rabbi David Kunin graduated from Brandeis University with a degree in medieval history and then attended the Jewish Theological Seminary of America, where he was ordained as a rabbi and received an MA in Judaic Studies. He has served in communities on 3 continents, the Americas, Europe, and Asia. David is a strong believer in the importance of good and harmonious relations between people from diverse religious communities. Interfaith relations have therefore been a continuous mark of his rabbinate. He received the Alberta Centennial Medal in recognition of his community work. David has also been working with the emerging Jewish community of Indonesia for 10 years. David is now the rabbi of Congregation Beth David in Saratoga, California. Rabbi David, it was a pleasure to meet you.
So thank you so much. So I'm going to be sharing a film. It's about 45 minutes, and then we'll have time for questions afterwards about the community in Indonesia. This is not the only community in Indonesia. Surprisingly, the most Muslim nation in the world also has, well, Hindus, Buddhists, and others, but also Jews. And so Kulanu also supports a community in Manado, near where the community that I visited is also located. We're one of the communities, and also, I believe, a community in Papua. So there's lots of vibrant Jewish life in Indonesia, even beyond what you'll see in the video this morning. But I look forward to questions afterwards. And some of the pictures, a lot of them come from actually our last visit to Indonesia. My wife and I spent a month there in July, and as you'll see, bringing a Sefer Torah to one of the communities. So without further ado, let me share the movie, and then look forward to questions. Members of the United Indonesian Jewish Communities have been on a long journey as they have reconnected with world Jewry, a journey which began in the distant past. Living across the length of a huge archipelago, they live in communities as large as megalopolis Jakarta and as small as Sentani, an indigenous village in the north of Papua. Whether in communities large or small, they live lives isolated from any of the world's major Jewish centers. Their communities are spread across nearly 3,000 miles on many different islands. Lampung in the west on Sumatra, Jakarta, the capital, on Java, Manado on Sulawesi, Ambon amidst the exotic Spice Islands, and Timika, Jayapura, and Sentani on Papua, Indonesia in the east. There are also smaller communities in central Java and in Bali. This is their story, and this is their journey. As a country, Indonesia is known as the home of Muslims, not of Jews. Indeed, it is the world's most populous Muslim nation. Yet in truth, its religious spectrum is quite diverse. In addition to Muslims, it is the home of Hindus, Buddhists, Christians, Confucianists, as well as a small community of Jews. Indonesia is a post-colonial amalgamation of over 260 million people spread across 17,000 islands with diverse languages, ethnicities, religions, and even colonial histories. In addition to mosques, it is a land of many churches and monumental Buddhist and Hindu temples. Beyond these differences, Indonesia is also a nation of amazing cultural diversity and creativity. Each island, and indeed each tribe, has its own crafts, music, and dance. There are surprises around every corner as one moves from the immense metropolis of Jakarta to the smaller cities on Sulawesi and in the Spice Islands, and to the indigenous villages in northern Papua, and indeed across the archipelago. From racing bulls masked dancers personating good and evil, woodcrafts, and weaving, and evidence the amazing creativity which abounds throughout Indonesia. While Indonesia's history goes back thousands and thousands of years, the Jews have been present for at least 1,500 years, and perhaps much longer. While the earliest historical record of Jews dates from the influx of Muslim traders in the 7th century, bringing with them Mizrahi and Baghdadi Jews, Papuan Jews believe that they are descended from a much earlier immigration from the 10 lost tribes. The Sentani people have a tradition that they came to Papua fleeing from the destruction of Jerusalem. There still is an island in the center of Lake Sentani with stones celebrating their safe arrival. The 10 stones on traditional royal Sentani regalia are a reminder of the 10 lost tribes of Israel. Another early arrival tradition is found among the members of the Indonesian Chinese community. Kaifeng Jews may have arrived as early as 1290, as many Chinese settled in Indonesia during and after the Mongol invasion. Jews also arrived during the period of European colonial incursions between 1500 and 1939. Anusim, forced converts to Catholicism from Iberia, arrived as early as 1540 with the Portuguese, following the voyages of discovery of Vasco da Gama, Magellan, and Antonio de Abreu. These Jews settled in the Maluku Islands, where they are found to this day. These are the fabled Spice Islands, home of cloves and nutmeg. Though these islands were soon captured by the Dutch in 1600, the Anusim and their descendants have remained. Many secret and openly practicing Jews also arrived during the 300 years of Dutch colonization as royal officials, officials of the Dutch East India Company, planters, soldiers, and merchants. Their descendants retain much more recent memories of their Jewish ancestry. Despite this influx of Jews across the archipelago, during these first 1,500 or more years of Jewish life in Indonesia, history records only one openly Jewish community, which had a synagogue building and a cemetery. Located in Surabaya, on the northeastern coast of Java, the Beth Israel Synagogue was founded in the late 19th century by Baghdadi Jews. Their descendants supported the synagogue and cemetery up until 2009, when the synagogue was destroyed. Now only a few families remain to maintain the cemetery. Today, the descendants of all of these now live across the Indonesian archipelago, and for the last 20 years have begun to come together to form re-emerging Jewish communities. While there are several communities coalescing in Indonesia, the largest of these is the UIJC, founded by Rabbi Benjamin Verbruch. Rabbi Verbruch learned of his Jewish heritage as a young teenager. His grandfather was a Dutch Jew who had come to Indonesia as a military officer in the Dutch colonial administration. He remained after independence, marrying and building a family.
My Jewish grandfather Kulanu in Bogor when I was 13 years old. And then suddenly Opa say, you know, actually I'm not Dutch, German, and I'm Jewish. See, actually from my my point nose, and he started to talk about why there is Israel and Jewish people, and we have to be the light of the world. At the time, I thought, because I was raised in Islam, and I thought that Christianity and Jewish Judaism more or less one group. Nobody told me until I was 13 years suddenly when I lived together with my grandfather. My father called me and 3 other grandsons and say, I am Jewish, and actually I perform your bride's wedding name, Jewish wedding name. So I'm Benny. I name you as Benjamin. I put my name to you, and so guys have to be circumcised. And I was very surprised. And I say, Opa, this is the German title of grandfather. Opa, I thought I will not be a Muslim. I don't require circumcision. And he said it has nothing to do with Islam, and even with Christians. This is Jewish. I'm Jewish, and you have to continue this tradition. And he recited blessing and sent us the 4 of the grandsons together to the Muslim doctor. The last meeting before he passed away, and he questioned me, God instructed you to do one work, one mission, but you did 4 things, and not even one single from the 4 things that you are doing actually asked by God. And I told you that you are not Christians. You are actually, I put my name on you, so you continue my destiny. Meaning that you will do only one work, that's obey to the one work, and don't be surprised that no single church will like you. And it inspired me, and finally, after the last meeting, my grandfather passed away a year later, and I decided to be religious. So I said, I need to start something Jewish and nothing to do with other religions. And I bring this to the community, and people come to me. I'm very surprised why they want to come to me, because maybe I'm very helpful and very warm welcoming to them. So I started this community, and I named it United Indonesian Jews Committee. I put United title because I believe, like Indonesian, we consist of 700 tribes. Everybody is not the same, and even if the Jewish people, everybody is not the same. We have Mizrahi, we have Ashkenazi, Sephardim, and all the families. So I don't believe only one color. So I try to embrace my people in Indonesia, only my people are expatriate, to have one family at least.
Ariella, often called Ibu Ariella, Ibu being an honorific meaning mother, is a scion of one of the Sentani royal families. She is the leader of all of the communities in Papua, from Timika to Sentani and Jayapura. She knew of the tradition that her tribe was descended from ancient Israel. Her family's life, however, was transformed when she began to learn about Judaism. She realized that the family observance of Shabbat on Saturday was not a Christian custom, and that there were many other Sentani practices which she believes are of Jewish origin.
Yang berkaitan dengan ritual Yahudi itu, yang saya lihat, mereka menyelesaikan soal adat itu duluan. Adat dulu, baru mereka akan masuk di dalam proses pernikahan kudus, katanya, gitu. Ya. Jadi proses adat itu duluan dulu, iya. Baik, tapi ada salah satu juga, ketika ada orang yang meninggal, ada seseorang ibu yang memang itu dia ketika ada orang meninggal, dia selalu datang dalam istilah orang Sentani itu hile-hili. Hile-hili itu artinya bahwa dia mengungkapkan semua kebaikan orang yang telah meninggal. Dan itu mulai dari danau. Jadi dari danau itu dia sudah mulai nangis begitu, jadi meratap. Dia meratapi, jadi meratapi dengan perkataan itu, dengan perkataan kebaikannya selama dia hidup, waktu dia masih kecil. Dia mulai dari itu terus sampai dia turun di pantai, dia masuk ke dalam rumah. dan dia terus, dan orang semua karena mendengar hile-hile itu, orang semua pada menangis dan mereka tahu siapa orang ini sebenarnya ketika ibu ini menceritakan semua kebaikan. Iya, Rabbi, dan setelah pemakaman, orang-orang yang pergi ke pemakaman itu termasuk ibu saya juga, itu mereka semua harus pulang, tidak bisa masuk rumah. Jadi mereka turun dengan pakaian semua dalam air. Mereka mandi dulu, lalu kami membantu dengan memberikan pakaian kepada mereka, lalu masuk. Dan saya tanya, Mama kenapa pulang dari kuburan langsung selalu masuk dalam air? Karena itu kan pergi tanam orang mati, jadi kita harus mandi. Oh baik, begitu.
On Manado, there are numerous descendants of the Dutch colonial period. Many of these have a hidden Jewish heritage. This is perhaps symbolized by a giant menorah built above the city. It was created by a provincial governor who was Christian, yet members of the Manado Jewish community suspect that she too may have a hidden Jewish heritage. There are two openly Jewish communities in the city. Vicky Avshalom Ratam Banua leads the UIJC Kehillah. Similar to Rabbi Verbruch, he learned of his Jewish heritage from an elderly relative.
I was a Christian with Jewish ancestor, and one of the elders in my family tell me that actually we are not come from Indonesia, and he show me a family document, especially a land ownership document. On the document, written that my family name is Sihar. The document dates on 19th century with the real name Sihar, and his name was Israel Sihar. And I asked one of my elder, what the name is Sihar. Sihar, they tell me that Sihar is family name from Holland. And he tell me that from his name, you have to know that we are actually Jewish. I choose to be a Jewish, like my ancestor.
Many of the Jews in Ambon, in the Maluku Islands, better known to us as the Spice Islands, believe that they are descended from Portuguese conversos, Jews forcibly converted to Catholicism in the 15th century in Spain and Portugal. These conversos helped to explore and colonize the islands in the early 16th century. Though the Portuguese were quickly replaced by the Dutch, their descendants remain. Moshe, the leader of the Ambon community, connects his ancestors with this Portuguese diaspora.
But somehow there is a talk within the cousins of my family that is saying that our family actually comes from a very, very far area, not from Indonesia. So once there's a cousin of mine told me that there's a saying in my family telling us that our family used to live in India. And before India, they came from Portugal. They came for the sandalwood and the gold at the land of Timor. So
Moshe's family history records that his ancestors were pushed from central Timor to the east. And then 400 years ago, they immigrated from Timor to Khazar Island. There, the traditions they followed were different than the other people found on the island.
But one of my cousins said that my ancestors lived at the area of Khazar Island, and they kept preserving our own tradition, our own belief, our own religion. So it's not really a Christian, it's not really whatever religion, it's not even the local religion. So
On Kisar Island, Moshe's extended family prayed in an octagon-shaped structure, unlike any other church or worship place on the island. He never understood its meaning until only 2 years ago, long after his return to Judaism.
2 years ago, I met one of the clever person from my father's village, and I was talking with him, and I was asking him, what do you think about the 8 angles room, which we call Tutu Ara? So, and he said, well, if you talk about Tutu Ara, the 8 angles prayer house, that means you have to go back to Judaism, because our ancestors lived within Judaism. So,
as a child, Moshe had no idea that his family could be Jewish, but they did maintain a number of rituals and beliefs, including a rejection of Jesus as God, which Moshe sees as confirmation of his Jewish identity.
A young boy like me at the age of 12, 13, began to explore without any technology at that time. So I began to observe some dates, like, for example, the 10th of the 7th month. I observed July 10th as the sacred day. Later, I know that was supposed to be the Yom Kippur. Nobody told me that. So when I grew up, I already understood a lot. That was really actually the Yom Kippur.
Family members shared with Moshe that his grandfather performed rituals that were reminiscent of those from the ancient temple.
When my grandfather harvested the maize, so he would take 7 maize and he would bind it as one group, and then he would take that maize into the altar and he would bring them up to the sky, and he would wave it and sing the song that my niece didn't know.
Unlike other indigenous families, Moshe's family stood out in its abstention from pork.
He said that in my family, we did not eat pork. My father was a shepherd. He looked after the lambs at our village, the lambs and the goats, no pigs. So in my family, we are forbidden to eat the red meat. So that's including pork. When we had any feast, it was we only ate lamb, mutton, and the goat, the meat of the goat.
Moshe also has a strong recollection of his father sharing with him the mysteries of the universe.
Sometimes my father took me outside the house and he made me stand under the clear sky, and he said, you see, that is heaven. The stars are on the sky. Can you imagine the Almighty One is sitting at the throne and you are very small, just like a tiny water out of the great ocean of water. So you remember how great is the one who creates the heaven and the universe.
Though each community is very different, they are united as the Jewish descendants of Indonesia. When asked, are you conservative, reform, or orthodox? Their answer was, we are Indonesian Jews. Indeed, the community celebrates its unique identity, wearing beautiful batik for Shabbat and festivals. And while home-baked challah is a mainstay of Shabbat, as it is across the world, the Shabbat and festival dinners are a mix of the wonderful spicy flavors of Indonesia.
The beautiful moment actually in Erev Shabbat, because Erev Shabbat, including my grandsons, join with singing and smiling, and then we of course have a special food for Shabbat that we don't eat in the weekdays. And since Shabbat, everything must be kosher, including the food. And I mostly nominate vegetarian food, Indonesian cuisines, like gado-gado, tempe tofu, And then we have some ketoprak with the peanut sauce.
It is, however, not easy to be one of the most isolated Jewish communities in the world. In many ways, the community has to be self-sufficient, especially because of the expense of importing kosher food. They cannot depend on shipments of matzah for Passover or even a lulav and etrog for Sukkot. Learning to bake their own matzah was a challenge, yet now it is done in communities across Indonesia. Etrogs have proven to be a greater challenge. Sometimes one arrives from Israel, but often a local fruit and even local leafy branches replace the myrtle and willow that are traditionally used. Palm branches, of course, are accessible throughout Indonesia.
We stop importing. We try to be independent. We use only the source available in Indonesia. Only etrog for Sukkot is still problematic.
Despite the challenges, they celebrate Pesach and the other holidays and Shabbat with amazing enthusiasm. Rabbi Baruch works very hard to unite the disparate communities. He broadcasts a service once a month from Sumatra to ensure that everyone across Indonesia can participate. In addition, he often travels from one community to the next. In the past, there was only one Torah that was available, which he carried with him.
Every week we have the Erev Shabbat and Shabbat Shacharit. Since I don't want to enjoy this simcha by myself, I need to spread. So for the community who cannot attend the synagogue, usually they have once a month online or virtual Shabbat meeting. So from this room, from that my home synagogue, we did the online Shabbat and I also teach from that one. Some community I have to travel to Manado, to Ambon, and to Papua for high quality and Jakarta.
Through his hard work and travels, Rabbi Ben has helped to create communities which celebrate a vibrant Judaism. For many years, the community depended on Rabbi Baruch's traveling Torah. But in 2018, this began to change. That year, we were able to bring 2 scrolls from the United States and Canada, donated by closing synagogues, one in Edmonton, Alberta, and the other in Newcastle, Pennsylvania. One now lives in Jakarta, while the second is in Temeka, Papua. A third scroll was brought in 2020, donated to the community in Ambon by vibrant congregation Beth Shalom Hever Shas in Syracuse, New York. And this year, in 2024, a 4th scroll was adopted by the Manado community, donated by closing synagogue Melrose B'nai Israel Emmanuel in Elkins Park, Pennsylvania. These closing synagogues will live again through their scrolls across Indonesia. The joy, excitement, and emotion was palpable as these scrolls arrived in their new communities. So at this time, pada saat ini, we'll take this Melrose, B'nai Israel, Emmanuel Torah.
Kita membawa Torah dari B'nai Rose Immanuel, Torah daripada B'nai Rose Immanuel,
which is now adopted by the Manado community.
saat ini akan diadopsi oleh komunitas Manado Bet Israel.
As it was a tree of life for the community in Pennsylvania.
Sebagaimana juga daripada pohon kehidupan dari komunitas Pennsylvania,
may it be a tree of life for the community here in Manado.
kiranya juga akan menjadi pohon kehidupan bagi komunitas Bet Israel WJC di Manado.
Amen. So I will pass the Torah to Rabbi Ben.
Saya akan memberikan Torah ini kepada Rabbi Ben,
leader of the UIJC,
pemimpin daripada WJC,
and then we'll pass it to Vicky, the leader of the community here.
dan kemudian saya akan menyerahkannya kepada komunitas di sini, pemimpinnya diwakili oleh Vicky,
and then we will sing as we enter the house and pass the Torah from person to person, so the whole community receives the Torah.
dan kemudian nanti kita akan meneruskan Torah ini kepada setiap anggota dalam keluarga dalam komunitas ini, sehingga orang masing-masing akan secara resmi menerima Torah ini.
Hosea Shalom Birullah. Every time a community adopts a Torah, it's an amazing and emotional experience. And so it was in Temecula, Papua.
Ya, secara pribadi dan juga kehilat yang ada, mereka merasakan bahwa mereka sudah menemukan Tuhan, gitu. Dan praktek kehidupannya ini, karena mungkin merasa diri bahwa diperhatikan, maka mereka tetap, walaupun tidak sahabat, tapi mereka tetap ada, mereka hadir selalu gitu. Di dalam keterlibatan mereka, walaupun mereka tetap ada di rumah, dan mereka ya tahu bahwa Tuhan itu ada dengan mereka, itu saja.
Life for many members of the UIJC is not easy. The economy of Indonesia has been very weak for many years. Today, $1 is worth nearly 16,000 Indonesian rupiah. Unemployment and underemployment are an endemic problem, and all of these challenges have been exacerbated by the COVID pandemic. Sometimes these economic challenges have necessitated risky solutions. Recently, several young members of the Ambon community, where low-paying jobs were insufficient for family needs, felt it necessary to leave Ambon for Papua, Indonesia, to prospect for gold. While Papua, Indonesia is the home of the world's largest gold mine, prospecting in rivers and streams is quite arduous, dangerous, and without a guarantee of success. Nonetheless, even in the malarial, mosquito-infested jungle, these young men have maintained their commitment to Judaism. Many of the homes of even prominent UIJC members are quite simple, with minimal facilities and few rooms. This is especially true for the indigenous Sentani community in northern Papua. Here, UIJC members live in their traditional homes, constructed of unfinished wood, with minimal furnishings, built right above the waters of the lake. Their kitchens may be a wood fire or a simple one-burner gas stove, and their dishwashers water from the lake. The only potable water is drawn from a single well, shared by the whole village. In Sentani, fish from the lake is the main, very minimal industry of the people. Yet even here, in the simple homes, one can find evidence of their commitment to living Jewish lives.
Amen. Vaya familia, mabaques. Vaya campos, vaya imsare tua. Vaya
Anti-Semitism has also been a problem for many UIJC communities, most often originating in the Christian-dominated communities in which many members live. In Ambon, stones were thrown against the home of Moshe, the leader of the local UIJC Kehillah, egged on by a local Christian pastor. These stones, as a remembrance, are now stored in the Aron Kodesh in Moshe's home synagogue. In Manado, members of the community have found employment difficult, both because of their Jewish identity and because of their unwillingness to work on Shabbat. The community leadership also worries about the rise of Islamism and the possibility of a growth of anti-Semitism within the Muslim majority. During a recent presidential election, leaders of the Jakarta community canceled their communal Seder and brought their Torah scroll to Bali, fearing the election of an Islamist candidate. While their fears at that time did not pan out, there is always a continuing risk of a rising anti-Semitism in Indonesia.
But when we talk about anti-Semitism, it's lurking behind the curtain. So we believe that we have to be careful because not every person around us is willing to be friendly with us, is willing to befriend the Jewish people. So we have to be careful.
Despite these challenges, the UIJC Kehilot thrive and flourish as they live more and more meaningful Jewish lives, both individually and as a community. They cherish the times when they come together for Shabbat, festivals, and for community simchas. It was our pleasure to celebrate conversions, baby namings, b'nai mitzvah, and weddings with the UIJC. These have been times of joy and celebration. When they come together to pray, whether in Papua, Ambon, Manado, or Jakarta, the davening skills and communal participation always astound. Though unpracticed, their voices come together like a well-trained choir. Rabbi Shoshana Kaminsky and I, as representatives of ARC, the Assembly of Rabbis and Cantors of Australia, New Zealand, and Asia, and of the Union for Progressive Judaism, have been working as mentors with the Indonesian community for more than 10 years. We have been enriched by this contact and have learned far more than we have taught.
Jewish life in Indonesia to be quite challenging to me as a Western Jew who had always had this sense that it was the peoplehood of Jews that was at the center of what it meant to be Jewish. Basically, our connection, our family connections to one another as Jews. And that wasn't the case at all in Indonesia. It was all about God. And this idea that Jews are God's chosen people. Judaism is God's chosen faith. The mitzvot are absolute commands from God. And so to live a faithful Jewish life means listening to God's voice as expressed through the language of Judaism. It was a completely different understanding of Judaism. And I'm very, very grateful to David Kunin for his perspective, which was much more worldly than mine, of saying, just because this is how we are accustomed to living Jewishly, that doesn't mean that the rest of the world is obligated to do it the same way.
Like the Indonesian Jewish community itself, Rabbi Kaminsky also found the bringing of the Torahs to be a powerful moment.
I think without a doubt, the highlight was when we brought the two scrolls to the Jakarta and the Timika communities. And we, again, as Westerners, we're accustomed to walking into a shul, and there's not one Sefer Torah there. There's 3, 4, 5, 6. It's just a given. And to see these scrolls treated as the most precious things in the world. That happened again when we presented a scroll to the community in Ambon just a little less than 2 years ago. And to see Moshe, the leader of that community, weep at having his own Torah scroll, it very much connected me to the power and passion of what it means to live a Jewish life.
Rabbi Kaminsky is now moving from Adelaide to work in the United States and has completed her final visit to Indonesia. But as she thought of all the time that she spent there, she expressed these final hopes.
I hope that the community there are able to continue to live the proud and passionate Jewish lives that they are living already, that they just go from strength to strength and continue to be an inspiration to the rest of us who often take our Jewish lives for granted.
You know, living Ambon, you would like to remember Sasana Kaminsky, we miss Sasana Kaminsky district, and we want to dedicate a song for Sasana. Agak malam, the way that the way as per Sasana Kaminsky.
As they closed, Rabbi Verbroch, Vicky, and Moshe shared some final thoughts.
The more we open Torah, the more answer we get for our life. And the answers are very clear, very sharp, and the discussion on Rabbi is excellent. A lot of alternative, single answer, and it really motivates us to be more creative in living in Indonesia.
Judaism is important for me because it can organize my life, and make my life more meaningful by connecting with the beliefs of my ancestors.
What do you,
I hope all of my family can be a good Jewish. We can celebrate all of the Jewish holidays with happiness and joy.
I expect that they will grow up in such a great love to Judaism, in such a great love to Kehillah, in such a great love to Israel.
this video captures but a brief moment in the life of the UIJC, Indonesia's Jewish community. Rabbi Shoshana Kaminsky and I came into the picture long after the community's history began and have experienced but a snapshot of its growth and development. Its journey as a vibrant part of world Jewry continues. Okay, so that was the film, and I'd be glad to answer any questions that anybody may have.
Thank you so much, Rabbi. We have two questions that have come in through the chat. One is, how many Jews are in Indonesia, and how many of them trace themselves back to Dutch, Portuguese, or the Arab lands, or
So
Jews from
that-
Arab lands and from the lost 10 tribes?
So that's a very hard question to answer. The numbers are difficult. In the UIJC has probably 300 to 400 or so, or maybe a little bit more than that, over all of its communities. There's another community, as I mentioned, in Manado, Yaakov Baruch, who connected, who's spoken at Kulanu events, is from there. They have a number as well. And then there's communities in Papua. So I would say maybe upward of 1,000, but that may be a little bit too high. As to the numbers of where people claim descent, most of the people in Java, so Rabbi Ben and in Manado, are of Dutch descent. And so, but it's hard to make a generalization, because when we were in Jakarta, we actually were working with and did a conversion for a woman who was Chinese, who didn't think she had any Jewish identity, but she went home and she told her uncle that she had converted to Judaism, and he asked her, "Why are you converting? We're Kaifeng Jews." So so making generalizations is very hard. So Jakarta is a bit of a mix. The community in Ambon is almost all Portuguese descent, and in Papua, the Sentani group claims to believes that they're descended from the 10 Lice tribes. So depending on the community, that's where you find the different traditions of descent. Molly, you're muted.
Sorry, thank you very much. We also have Joshua with his hand raised.
Hi, I have a couple of questions. Hopefully, you may know the answer or not. So, these are people that, let's say, are seeking Judaism, however you wanted to say it in that sense, according to either conservative or Orthodox standards. You mentioned about conversions. So, what percentage, whether in the UIJC one or Yaakov Baruch, which is the more Orthodox one, are halachic according to the conservative Orthodox movement? In other words, do these congregations accept anyone who seeks, or I mean that they probably do, but like, how many or what percentage are converted according to the conservative Orthodox in each of these communities, just to get like more of a commitment, quote unquote, you want to say in that sense?
Okay, I can't speak to Yaakov Baruch's community, though I know he does some conversions. The UIJC made a decision way before we got there to that the whole community, even though some of them were halakhically Jewish, Ben's mother also is Jewish, so he comes from a halakhically Jewish family, though to some degree it was passed down. But yeah, but they made a decision that everyone in the community would go through a conversion, so that everybody in the UIJC would be equal. And no one could say my father is better than yours. And all of the conversions were done. Were supervised by me, and I'm a conservative rabbi. So all of the conversions were done according to halacha, as seen within the conservative movement. And everybody went through a long training. All the men were circumcised, and if needed, hatafat dam brit. And everyone was immersed in a mikveh and went before a beit din. So it was, that was a lot of the process. I've now spent close to 3.5 to 4 months in Indonesia over the last 10 years. So it's been quite arduous and lots of meeting people, but it's been wonderful meeting the people. But yeah, Yaakov Baruch, I can't speak to, but I know he does Orthodox conversions, and but it's it's a relatively small number on Monado, because there the community is but it's a very vibrant community in Monado.
Right, thank you.
I'd like to talk about Yaakov Baruch's community. He was just in the United States, and Molly and I had lunch with him about a week and a half ago. He is there are about 30 people or so in his community for Shabbat. And what's really, well, the reason he came to the United States is that the US State Department in Indonesia has an interfaith program of which they took a Jew, a Muslim, and a Christian into the United States to tour. And he was the Jew that they picked because he's internationally known. He's a lawyer. He's teaches at the university. But the very unique thing about his community, well, there's a few unique things. One, that he's really descendant of Spanish Portuguese. There are Spanish Portuguese graves there. I think at the height of the Spanish Portuguese community, the Dutch community there. There are cemeteries that are there. But the really unusual thing is he set up the first Holocaust museum in Indonesia. It's a small museum. There were big Muslim protests about this museum. The museum was actually written up in the Wall Street Journal, which was my surprise when he was here. I Googled it, and lo and behold, it was a Wall Street Journal article. And so what's going on in Indonesia is breathtaking and inspiring. I mean, and the question about, that question, which is daunting, are they really Jews? And because the bulk of the communities that Kulanu deals with have not undergone conversion. We're in 33 countries. We have thousands and, some people say even millions of people who call themselves either Israelites, Hebrews, Jews of some sort, practice some kind of Jewish living, and they have not converted to Judaism. And the only thing I'll add on this one, well, I'll add two things on this one. One, that they are philo-Semitic groups. Israel is beginning to recognize them. About a year and a half to 2 years ago, there was a conference in Israel that Herzog and Sharansky addressed on affinity groups, and these groups are considered affinity groups, so they're beginning to take notice. And one of the things I always say is Herzl had a big fight to get this idea of a Jewish state going. I mean, eventually he won it. And I think this emerging Jewish community thing is a big fight for recognition. And I think long term we will win this battle. And I think that Indonesia, Sub-Saharan Africa, and Latin America have a lot to teach American Jews in terms of inspiration and perseverance and jumping through hoops for practice and dedication. And that's why my heart is with Kulanu, because I think the future of Judaism, the future Talmidei Chachamim, the future learned people of the Jewish world will come from these emerging Jewish communities. Okay, there are other people who raised their hand, Molly.
Thank you. Dan Levitsky. You're muted still. Perfect.
Yeah, the one of the reasons that when you mentioned that the Chinese Jewish women underwent conversion was that, halakhically speaking, none of the Kaifeng Jews really qualify, because there were men as Jewish traders going back to maybe 1,000 common element that showed up there. There were no Jewish women ever involved. They all married ethnic Chinese women. So even to this day, none of the descendants, Jewish descendants that are there, as that's what we call them, really, halakhically speaking, qualify as being Jewish, which is why any of them that go to Israel have to undergo conversion.
Yeah, I'm not going to address that, what I think about that requirement, but I will address the fact that, yeah, in Indonesia, yes, obviously she was not halakhically a Jew, but the whole community, but as I said, she did convert. So, and because they saw that as necessary. I do see a question in the chat. Someone asked about Tovia Singer's group. Rabbi Tovia Singer came to Indonesia, first of all, to meet the community in Papua. And then later on, he settled in Jakarta, and he set up with a Noahide group in both Jakarta and in Papua, of which 1 or 2 people have converted to Judaism, but the bulk of which were seen as Noahide. He is no longer in Israel, in Indonesia, and the groups that he supervised, one group in Papua, a Kulanu rabbi, or a rabbi that was supported by Kulanu, went out there a few years ago, and the group in Jakarta has largely dwindled after Rabbi Singer left.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And Susan Goldberg, I see your hand is raised.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thanks. I also posted that question about Rabbi Singer, but I posted another one that I was wondering if you can discuss. I know a woman named Yehudit Cohen who lives in Crown Heights, who teaches at a women's seminary for people who want to become Gerim. Yeah, or I'm sorry, what is the Gerut? The Hebrew feminine plural. But she mentioned to me several years ago that among her students were 2 women from Papua who were in Crown Heights studying. Do you know them? I recall she said one of them was a lawyer, had been a lawyer, in fact. And I haven't seen Yehudit Cohen since then, so I don't know if they've returned to Papua, if they've stayed in the United States, or do you know anything about at least these 2 women from Papua?
No, I don't know about, I haven't met them, no. Or even no one's mentioned them, so I don't know anything about them, no.
Yeah. Because also, I'm sorry, quickly, several years ago, I got this necklace from a group in Papua in Yerushalayim, because I believe I was there to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the reunion, the liberation, reunification of Yerushalayim. And there was, you know, big celebrations in the streets and things like that. And we were dancing together, and I had a big Israeli flag. So I traded my flag for this necklace from Papua. From Jew. I remember they said they were Jews. I mean, if you ask me names.
I need to mention, so Papua is a confusing term because there's a Papua Indonesia, which is the western half of the island, and Papua New Guinea, which is the east. And there are communities that believe that they're Jewishly descended in both Papua New Guinea and Papua Indonesia. In fact, if you Google, you can find people dressed in very indigenous traditional clothing singing the Shema. And I was actually approached to supervise a community in Papua New Guinea, but I thought I was a bit overextended, and I had to do my real work. So I wasn't able to do that. That was a number of years ago. So it could be on either place.
Just one last quick question. Are there any Jews on the island of Nias?
Not that I've heard.
Okay, thank you.
But that doesn't preclude it, but not that I've heard.
Sure. Thank you.
I visited with my husband Papua New Guinea for the Gogodala tribe about I don't know, it's probably about 10 years ago, with Professor Tudor Parfit at Florida International University. The tribe does believe that they're from ancient Israel. They do have some Jewish practice, but they still have a messianic approach to them, as Australian Messianic Christians have taught them. But they do have a Jewish practice. They changed a Sunday worship to Shabbat. They read the Torah portion. They do have some Jewish holiday commemorations, but when we were there about 10 years ago, they still had a little Jesus in their hearts. So they never fully became a Kulanu community. There's lots of them. Some of them are very aware Jewishly. There were some visitors within the last year that people who travel contact Kulanu for contacts. I see there's somebody here that's asking, they want to go to Indonesia. I would imagine Rabbi Kunin can contact that person with contacts. Anyway, so they contacted me that they wanted to go to Papua, and when they came back, they reported they still have a little Jesus in their heart, even if they wear tzitzit tied onto their belt straps. So that's the Papua New Guinea group. That I was personally involved with.
Yeah, you can find there's a lot of Judaizing and groups that have Jewish in Indonesia as well. So that there was one man who decided to leave his more messianic group and come to the UIJC, and he brought with him a talit, and it was interesting at best. The knots were tied in a way that had nothing connected with how we tied tzitzit. And so that was, it's interesting, seeing how they do and how they try to approach Judaism, but still with Jesus as we heard. But yeah, so I've seen that as well. So are there any other questions?
No, I think that basically covers them all. Thank you so much for joining us today and sharing the film. It's beautifully done.
Yeah, we should have a film like that for every community. The amount of work and it was fabulous. The interviews were fabulous. I think it was eye-opening for so many people. I want to thank you. I want to thank Molly. I see familiar faces. I see Lily Kaufman is here and she's on our board. And I see Ellie Lehman, who was on our board, who's still here. There's lots of familiar names and familiar faces, but last time I got creamed that I didn't mention everybody right. So I'm not going to mention all the friendly faces that are here and the friendly names that I see. This year, we gave 33 Rosh Hashanah grants for food to communities, okay, all over Latin America and Sub-Saharan Africa. I think we also we have this great community in Pakistan. We give to Pakistan, we give to India. I believe we give to Indonesia as well. And we have a matching gift campaign going on for Rosh Hashanah. Molly will put the link in the chat and it will help us pay for some of the money we already just sent out to communities for Rosh Hashanah. The list keeps growing. We give holiday meals, Pesach and Rosh Hashanah. We call it like a high holiday grant and Sukkot. So anyone interested in donating, we'd be very interested in engaging you in conversation. Lily Kaufman on our board is also involved with our estate. You know, if you have an estate and you want to mention Kulanu in your estate planning, that would be wonderful. We have a bunch of people who do that already. I know Hadassah is famous for it, and UJ Federation does it, and Kulanu has gotten in on this. If you want to include some of us in your long-term planning, that would be appreciated. Also, we have maybe Molly can put the what is it called? The UR code for a book. We just came out with a book describing, it's called Jewish Africans Describe Their Lives. I'm co-editor. It's got everything it's 10 sub-Saharan Jewish communities that are presented in their own words. It's transcriptions from Zooms that we had with them or personal interviews that they had given me over many years. And the interesting thing about this book, if you get it through Amazon, the only way to get it is through an Amazon ebook. And if you are a Amazon Prime person, it's free. It's a free download. If you're not an Amazon Prime person, it's $9.99, of which Kulanu gets $6 and Amazon gets about $4. So we would love you to download the book or buy the book. You go to Amazon ebook and type in my name, Benita Nathan Sussman, and the book will come up. You don't need more information than that.
The link is also in the chat. I did put the link in the chat.
Oh, good. It's also in the chat. Good. And okay, everybody. Are there any other questions, comments? Thank you for coming. Okay, I see Cameroon here, which makes the presence from Sub-Sahara legitimate. Thank you for coming. Okay, anybody else? Any other comments? Thank you. Hope to see you on October 7th. And the Kaifang Jews, we have Ansid coming to present about the Kaifang Jews and the history. They're reconstituting themselves. There's a lot of political pressure on them not to do this. It's sort of secretive, but they're still very eager to do this. Okay, hope to see all of you soon. Spread the good word, share our information, download the book, and come on October 7th. Thank you. Bye.
L'shana tova.
L'shana tova, everybody. L'shana tova.